Okay, you should be able to hear me now. It was my fault. Sorry about that. Again, so this is the first time I'm using this platform, but it's okay because okay, you should be able to hear me now. It's
It was my
okay
fault.
because that gave some
Sorry
time for
about
like
that.
three other people to get on live because I usually record these. So, welcome. My name is Jennifer, and this is the fifth iteration podcast. You guys will be joining me as I record several things today. I was given a brief overview of the changes that you see just here on my YouTube channel. Um, Over the past 10 years or so, I have been working in various projects, bringing different things to the internet and to my community. And I see now that what has been happening with me is that I have been a medium and a channel for information through all seven channels, also known as all seven energy centers, aka chakras. And so this is a work of the fruit of that time and what has been revealed to me. And also, I share with you just my thought processes and my discoveries in different topics. And so today I'm coming to you via the seventh channel, the fifth iteration. And what I have for you, I'm going to share my response and my thoughts to a broadcast that I had the opportunity to watch this morning. However, the broadcast came out like, I don't know, 2 or 3 weeks ago. And so this is the broadcast that I watched, and it was on Black Magic 363, our Brother Rich's channel. And I didn't know Brother Rich until I think he did a live with Seven Bomar. Um and so 3 weeks ago or so he did a live with Minister Ju and Noble Anpu. Those brothers call themselves the priesthood, and they've been around for a long time, but they've been in my sphere for probably the last 12, 13 years. So I do know these brothers. And but they did a live, and the topic was the signal. It was very interesting. Maybe you've watched it or listened to it. Maybe I will play like a small clip from the video just to give you a premise of what it's about. I did not prepare the timestamps for that, but I think that that would be smart. And again, this is the live recording. I will be editing this for the podcast platform. So let's see if we can play a little bit. Um, let's see.
Told me to put
Let's see.
of a cloud.
Let me go just to the beginning. All right. And this is going to give you a premise of what this episode was about.
I
Before I hit play, I just want to make sure that the sound is still coming through okay. So let me go in and check the chat right now. Even make sure that I'm still live. Let's see. Yes, I'm still live. Good. And I think that the sound is still good. Okay. I'm going to play just a few seconds of this.
it permeates into your reality, right? The title God is Radio Wi-Fi. And so when we did the show a couple weeks back, Ampu got into the radio aspect. I didn't even get a chance to get into the Wi-Fi part because my brother had so many loaded slides that I was like, look, bro, just go ahead and cook. I just saved mine for another time. So as y'all know, Rich hit me up, and the rest is history because we here now. So I'm gonna get into my part, and then I'm gonna let Ampu let off a clip on y'all people, man. So look, God is Wi-Fi. What is Wi-Fi, Ju? We a couple things. We want to know what is Wi-Fi in relationship to this frequency that we call God, how to use it, and the mechanics of how it works. So I kind of want to go through 3 layers tonight to get you guys to understand these principles so that you don't leave here with any questions. You got a firm understanding on exactly how this signal works, how to tap into this signal, and what this signal looks like when it permeates into your reality, right? So Wi-Fi is what, Ju? It's a wireless network, right? That uses radio waves, wink, wink, to provide high-speed feedback or get data to and from places. But they also tell you what, Ju? Where do they tell us that we store this information at, y'all? On the cloud, right?
Mm-hmm.
They say it's on the cloud, but remember, the cloud is the place where information is stored in what? A remote location that can be retrieved by the user whenever the information is needed. So you got to download, go get it from your cloud. You got pictures, go get it from your cloud. But this information is sitting somewhere else in a remote location that's waiting on you to call it down.
Okay, I'm going to skip forward.
Now,
don't skip this video.
Sorry about the
God wants to speak to you. He has chosen you.
Okay.
If you are watching,
because we talking about a signal.
Yeah.
We talking about the signal. Now listen, you have some activity in your brain. I mean, everybody that's listening, this don't nullify anybody. If you're sitting here and you're conscious and you're listening and watching, this applies to you. Even if you're not sitting and watching, it still applies to you. There's activity going on in your brain called the binding factor. And this is very, very important in how you tune into the signal, which is said to originate in a structure deep down in that limbic brain called the thalamus, which regulates all of your sensory input. I mean, everything. In this structure, the circuitry moves from the deep limbic structure of the thalamus to the surface of the brain 25 times in a millisecond.
Wow. Shit.
Okay, so I'm going to pause right there. So that gives you the premise of what they mean, what they're referring to when they're talking about this signal, where it could be coming from, how we're connected to it. So now let's get into the next share, which came from Noble Anpu, and we're going to play a little bit so we can get what he was saying.
The Jew came to me and told me to put the info up. It was that much upstairs. Put it up. We're going to deal with space-time. Shout out to my man, Radio Rahim, as they open up in the Quran. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim.
Oh, yeah.
There's a verse in the Holy Quran that says, and he rendered the sun and moon to serve as calculation devices. Pick this up. So the question I'm going to ask y'all is, well, what if this calculation device goes beyond just keeping a calendar? What if you can use the sun and moon as calculation devices for something else? And of course, you know I'm going to show you. So let me backtrack a little bit, because how I got started on Goddess Radio, I was dealing with Exodus 14 and 19. And it says the angel of God who had gone before the camp of Israel withdrew and went behind them. The pillar of cloud also moved from before them and stood behind them. Now, it is something that's known in the mysteries of Judaism that God has 72 names. So y'all be thinking just Yahweh and Jehovah, but God got 72 names. All right. And it was figured out by the Kabbalists who studied these 3 particular verses, 19, 20, and 21 in Exodus chapter 14. Okay. Now, just to show you a little bit, if you type in the 72 names of God, you're going to see all these different links pop up. This is a known phenomenon for those that's into the mystery schools. Okay. Now, I like to deal with the bottom translation, but at the top in red, you see a column of smoke, but the bottom translation says, hey, it's a pillar of cloud. But let's read that yellow underline. And there was the cloud and the darkness, and it lit up the night. And I said, wait a minute. I know they better not be talking about what I think they're talking about. So I start to get in Anon a little bit, like Ju showed, and this aspect shows that, okay, it's dealing with a nimbus cloud, a thunder cloud, right? And then what does on also means in green? Time. I said, uh-oh, we about to go somewhere. So I know about the Milky Way rift. Y'all want to know about Black Mama Universe? It's right here. This is the cosmic vagina of all vaginas for us in this reality, okay?
Hey, I just want to put a little timestamp right here because what he just said is going to be a big part of my response. So what we're looking at right here is the Milky Way. And what I also see this as is basically Mother Newt in the sky. Okay, and he just says that as well. But just remember this moment.
So this is called the Great Rift, aka the Milky Way Rift. This is what it looks like at night. You can really see it right here, okay? And so then this is also in the Inca cosmology right here. Remember Zorro back in the day, they used to come on with the mask. You know what I'm saying? So that's there. And of course you got it in Egypt with the star goddess Nut, okay? So this is something indigenous people know. So then the question became, is this the cloud that lit up the night? How can a cloud light up the night? Okay. So let's backtrack a bit because I'm going to give y'all a paper that I wrote on my Patreon. It's called Fractal 26. Ladies and gentlemen, you are 26,000 light years away from the galactic center. I got to hit y'all with some of that Holy Quran scripture. God created the heavens and the earth in true proportions. Verily, in that is a sign for those who believe. Wait a minute, true proportions.
So I'm going to fast forward us a
72 times
bit.
3 verses is 216 letters. I just showed you that the amount of the galactic center is a radius.
Okay, so we're going to pick up here. So remember, he just said that we're 26,000 light years away from the galactic center. So let's read about what the galactic center is.
Okay.
Come on, y'all.
Okay.
All right.
Sitting still.
Yeah.
It's going to more than 5:45 p.m. Right ascension in 72 years, it's more than 5:45 p.m. Right ascension angle, Ra. Ra ain't just your falcon head god in Egypt. Ra is an astronomical formula called right ascension. Okay? Now read the yellow underline. It's in Sagittarius A and it's a compact radio. What? Source. Wait a minute. So you telling me the galactic center is a radio? Okay.
Come on, y'all.
Okay.
Sorry.
They were excited about
y'all.
that.
I'm sorry. I had to say something. I'm sorry.
Go ahead, bro.
Go ahead, man. Come on, Noble. Come
Go
on,
ahead.
Noble.
Go ahead. So
swinging.
now,
Okay, so I'm
use.
going to pause here and I just want to point out a few things. All right, so this galactic center, basically the center of our Milky Way galaxy, which we know that Earth is inside the Milky Way as well as the other planets in our solar system. So that center point from Earth's perspective, so from Earth looking up into the sky at the very center of the Milky Way, we would see the Milky Way being in the Sagittarius constellation. Okay. And it stays there for a very long time, right? So it's in Sagittarius from our perspective. Now, according to Wikipedia, it's saying that the galactic center is a compact radio source. So there's a source there in this galactic center, a radio source. That means that something is coming through. Something is coming through at that point. So I wanted to point that out. So Anpu is going to go on to show this image here. And basically, this is an image when the sun lines up with that galactic center. Okay. And that would be when the sun enters Sagittarius season, right? So Sagittarius season starts at the end of November. So at about, according to his work here, he says that December 18th is when the sun is going to line up with this galactic center, right? Now, I'm trying not to have you guys have to go watch the whole video, but I do suggest that you do go and watch the video so you can get the entire explanation. So he's going to go on and talk about basically how the sun is our primary source, right? The sun is our primary giving source. Some people look at the sun as God. Some people look at the sun as God, or it being synonymous, right? The son of God. It's actually the Son of God. um, so here he does some numerology. The name of Yahweh comes up as 26 in numerology. And then with a little bit of more numerology, he begins to make connections with this number 26. Right? Let me get there to where he's so there's all these connections that he starts to make with the number 26. And if I could, I think it's back this way, actually. Um, where are we? I think this is where he starts to say, let's hit play.
This is why the Jews refer to God as Hashem, which means the name. Sidebar, ladies and gentlemen, those Jews that you see in Brooklyn, you think the Jews go by, they worship Yahweh? They don't even say that name. You have to say Hashem. Okay? They don't even say that name. All right? But when you look at Yahweh and you do the geometrical value of it, 10, 5, 6, 5, it equals 26. Wait a minute. Hold on, time out. Hold on. So let's go to the bottom left.
Whew, man.
We're 26,000 light years away from the galactic center.
Yes,
Top
check.
left.
Check.
All right. Top right. We're 26,000 years in the precessional circle.
Check.
Got it? Okay. We're on December 18th when the sun's directly in the center. It happens to be 26 degrees Sagittarius.
Check.
And now you're telling me Yahweh's number equals 26.
Check.
Now, here's the question in the middle. Can Yahweh be a computation? A fractal of our galactic distance, which is our energy source, a fractal of 12 zodiac ages, a six is the only number that sits in between the square and the cube. Now, this is where y'all got to pay some close attention at. A square is 5 times 5. That's 25. We say 5 squared. A cube is 3 times 3 times 3. That's 27. That's 3 cubed. But a square is a 2D object, like a piece of paper laying on the ground. You won't see a shadow. A cube is a 3D object. And last time I checked, there is no whole number that sits in between 2 and 3. So how can 26 sit in between the square and the cube, which is 2D and 3D, where it ain't no whole number or dimension that sits in between 2 and 3? Y'all really want to know what the mystery of Yahweh is?
It's animating it.
Oh, buddy, is it? So a square we know is 2D, 360 degrees.
Okay, so they're going to go into a lot more of some numerology, which I'm not getting into. But what I want to add or bring into this conversation or this observation is a feminine perspective. So I think that what's happened here is that they're definitely onto something, because Yahweh being the number 26, and the sun, when it lines up with this galactic center, right, which happens once a year when the sun enters Sagittarius, because from our perspective, the Milky Way is in the Sagittarius constellation, and it's there for like thousands of years. It's on the cusp of moving into Scorpio constellation, and then after that, Libra. But right now, it's sitting in the Sagittarius, which connects to us being in the age of So I'm not an astrologer, but there were some things that just stood out to me and gave me a lot of questions. So, number one, I think that first of all, we have to think about the radio source, okay? Radio is just one particular type of wave in the electromagnetic spectrum. So I think that this is one huge consideration, right? So I guess what I'm going to be posing today is who and what is God? When we say God, who and what are we talking about? Are there lesser gods? Are there higher gods? And I think the answer to that question is that there are levels to this, simply put. Okay, so in this live that they did, I feel like this math and this science dials them into Yahweh for sure, right? Because he proves that. It's a methodology. And he quoted the Bible as well as the Quran, right? Which are both religions, and we'll get into what type of religions they are shortly. So I think, yes, there is a science and a mathematics wavelengths. And I think the science of what they're sharing here puts them on the wavelength of a radio, right? It's a radio wave, which is one particular wave on an entire spectrum. Another thing that needs to be taken into consideration is viewing the sun as the ultimate source, right? So the sun sits in our solar system, in our galaxy, right? But which is very, and I don't want to take away that it is very central to us. It is the central point. So it's very integral and important to us. However, the sun sits inside, right? It sits inside something. And that's what is, I think, just as important, if not more important. Because again, like I said, there are levels to this. And we have to ask ourselves, what do we want to be tapping into? What do we need to be tapping into? What are we supposed to be tapping into? So from there, let's see, where do I want to go next? So I think where I want to go next is I want to pull up the fact that, everything pretty much in this world, in this reality, right? It's pretty much ruled by religion for the most part, and different types of religions. Christianity, Islam are both considered patriarchal religions. with male gods, and for the most part, no mention of the feminine component or aspect of God. And so I'm going to, let me switch up my screen now because I'm going to start referencing a book. And here we go. Okay, so this is a book that I've talked about a lot on this channel. And this book is called The Great Cosmic Mother. And I have the PDF copy pulled up on the screen, but I have the physical copy here. And so the book is deep. But I want to point out, first of all, 2 chapters in this book. Okay, this book is broken up into parts, I believe 4 parts. Let me go to the table of contents. Yeah, 4 parts. The very last part is patriarchal culture and religion. Okay, and maybe I should just pull up the table of contents on the screen. That way you can see what I'm saying. So here we are. Here's the book. And then let's hurry and get to, here we go, table of contents. So there's 4 parts, all of these chapters, but this book tells a story. It starts with women's early culture, women's early religion, women's culture and religion in Neolithic times, and then the very last section, which is the patriarchal culture and religion. And I'm going to be referencing these 2 chapters, the sun god and the jealous god. We all know that God that we learn about in church calls himself a jealous God. I can't tell you how many times I heard my pastor say that in sermons. God is a jealous God. So that stood out to me immediately. But let's just go to the chapter on the sun god. And I have highlighted some things that I want to point out. Now, I want to remind you of that reference that was made, and I said, remember this point in the video where we see the sky and we see the Milky Way, like it looks like a big crack in the sky. And I said I refer to this as Mother Newt. So I'm sure you are aware of, Kemetic cosmology. You've heard of Mother Newt. She's the mother in the sky, right? And so let's start with, all right, let's start. Now, this book gives lots of references to things in history as well as other books, but I've highlighted some quotes. The first one is referring to the Gilgamesh, the Epic of Gilgamesh. So it says the dates from 1600 to 2000 BC. Thompson, who I'm assuming is the author, calls this 4,000-year-old story the very foundation of Western literature. For what we are witnessing here is to set the pattern for all Hebrew and Greek literature to come. So I wanted to point this out because it starts to reference, in particular, Hebrew. And so we have to look at the origins of these religions. And just personally, like, to me, it's important to know the truth. Like, I'm going to always be looking to get to the bottom of things. I want to know the truth of things. So there it is. All right. So the next thing, this effort to displace the female seems to be the archetypal foundation for civilization, for mankind has been at it ever since. Okay. And then it goes on to talk about the tribes of the Amazons, and she kind of takes you on a story into the past, but she gives some references to how you can find evidence of this past, because like me, I'm like, oh, this is just mythology, right? So there's this quote, and I have it somewhere and I'll get to it soon. Yeah, we'll get to it. It's highlighted, but before I keep scrolling, so she goes on, she mentions the Amazons, she mentions Troy. But this is one historical reference. Julius Caesar, in his historical memoirs, speaks respectfully of the great queen Semiramis, who ruled Syria and led its Amazon troops into battle. African Amazon warrior women were still alive and well in 19th century Dahomey, and an elite Amazon corps Malawi in 1964. All right, so we got that. So then she goes on, and then she shares this myth. Okay, here is a Hebrew myth telling how God the Father separated the originally bisexual twins. So this is very esoteric, and it gets into a past where there were more androgens, basically, or that even the great cosmic mother herself was more of an androgen, excuse me, more of an androgen. And so there she includes this myth, and you may have heard of it. Okay, it's a Hebrew myth. And she says, so the war god Yahweh came to power. When the official Genesis of the Hebrew Bible, the deep, Tehom, the mother of all, is biblically defined as mud, the swamp, some mindless beast matter, who must be kept under paranoid patriarchal control and always subject to the father's logos. So there's more here, but then she begins to connect to home to Tiamat. And so I know you have heard of Tiamat, right? So Tiamat, the formidable Babylonian mother goddess, was the model for the Hebrew Tehom or Tehomet. Tiamat was mother of the deep, who fashioned all things. She displayed herself as night, truth, and justice. Tahom Mayat. Mayat, the goddess of truth and justice. Tiamat gave birth to the gods. Then, in later patriarchal epic, the gods rebel against her, and she is finally conquered by the sun god, hero Marduk, who had been promised supremacy over the other gods. Okay? So she goes on. Here, the father god world is essentially created through male conquest and an act of matricide. All right. So what I'm getting at here is that I think we need to expand our view. Okay. I talk about the bird's eye view, right? Depending on your vantage point, is going to determine how much you see. So my question for myself, right? What fuels me in this quest is, do I want to know the truth? Do I want to be aligned with the highest God, right? And the answer for me is yes. Do I want to align myself with a God that usurped the throne, right? And I'm not saying, look, this is my investigation that I'm sharing with you guys. Okay. So please take none of this personally and take this as like an invitation of personal discourse within your own mind and with others. I feel like these are questions we should be asking ourselves. So basically, this entire book goes into the history kind of, I feel like it's almost like a version of history of the universe. So imagine that we only came in towards the end of the story and we were not privy to what happened in previous ages. We have to actually go searching for what happened, right? So we're at the end of the age of Pisces. We're moving into the age of Aquarius. So before the age of Pisces, there was the age of what comes before Pisces? Capricorn? Is it Capricorn? I believe it's Capricorn. Capricorn. No, Aquarius, duh. So actually what comes after Pisces? So what comes after Pisces is I'm drawing a blank and it's only because I'm on live. Because if I wasn't live, let's see. Pisces. All right. So, goodness. Sorry, y'all. Oh, goodness. I'm going to edit this part out. Oh, goodness. But I do, I want to be careful about what I say because sometimes um, I like I have so much that my mind wants to say at the same time. And I'm like, okay, let me slow down. Slow down. I can't take the heat. Slow down. Da, 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 da. Aries. Okay. So before the age of Pisces, there was the age of Aries. No wonder I can't remember Aries because Aries is like literally my opposite. So anyways, yeah. So these were ages, and do we believe and think that people exist during that time? What was the world like? The world has not always been what it is. We're living in a version of reality right now. And a lot of it, well, our version of reality is determined a lot by our language, right? So that'll have to be a different episode, but it connects to what's happening and the way that we see the world. So I have a few other quotes that I want to point out. She represents the time before the gods, before the establishment of patriarchal hierarchies and distinctions. And then she actually talks about some of the correlation with the serpent and how that was a symbol that was flipped upside. It's really quite sad to me that all of this happened. Well, let's keep going. All right, so then we get into the next chapter, which is the sun god. And okay, so here she included something. This is good. The people were now supposed to forget what was written on the gate of the ancient goddess Newt. What there is, what will be, and what has been is me. Nobody has uncovered my shaitan. The fruit that I bore was the son. Instead of being the fruit of the great mother tree, the male governors of the Egyptian dynasties now pretended to have been created by a father god. Okay. And then we have more. Okay. And then we get into the jealous God chapter, which there is one thing that I wanted to point out with this. Well, yeah, so she starts to talk about monotheism. We are told monotheism began with the Jews, that it was a great spiritual invention of the religious leader Moses. This is not so. The worship of one God, like everything else in religion, began with the worship of the goddess. Her universality has been duly noted by everyone who has ever studied the matter. Monotheism, once thought to have been the invention of Moses or Akhenaton, which I know I'm butchering that. Akhenaton. Was worldwide in the prehistoric and early historic world. So I'm going to read that again without me butchering. Monotheism, once thought to have been the invention of Moses or Akhenaton, was worldwide in the prehistoric and early historic world. So prehistory, right? And the early part of history, there was monotheism. And this monotheism was around a more feminine form of divinity in God. So yeah, this chapter goes into some other specifics, and she gets in and she's talking about Moses in the Old Testament and Hebrews and the story. And so I thought, wow. Oh, here, I think there's one more quote. Yeah, so there's a lot here. I think I might read a little bit more because I actually underlined this in my physical book, but not on the PDF. So let me see if I can quickly find. Okay, there we are. Yeah, it's here we go. Right here. Both Yahweh and Islamic Allah began as lunar gods, consorts of the goddess. And so then she goes on to talk about, Levi and Leviathan. But then I wanted to go down to a little bit further down, which I believe is on this next page here. Yeah. Okay. This is important, so I'm going to start here. As people separate more and more from oneness within the body, within the earth, within the cosmos, religious doctrine takes on the form of instructional maps on how to get there, how to get back. But maps based on God as misogynistic male cannot take people back to the female source, nor can an anti-earth, anti-physical God return us to the holistic epiphany of body, mind, and spirit inhabited as one. In Deuteronomy 16 and 20, it is said, "You shall not plant any tree as an Asherah beside the altar of God." All right, so let's talk about what the Asherah was. The Asherah was the Neolithic goddess Inanna Ishtar, Astareth, and Asherah, or the symbol of the goddess. It was a conventionalized or stylized tree, perceived as she, and planted therefore at all altars and holy places. This Asherah represented the goddess as Erikitu, the green one, the Neolithic mother-daughter of all vegetation, of our agriculture, knowledge, and abundance. Yahweh's absolute hostility to the Asherah was a political hostility of the nomadic pastoral Hebrew people, or their priesthood at least, to the settled matriarchal cultures and their goddess beliefs. It became a psychological hostility to the entire living earth, doctrinalized in the biblical text. I promise I'm a good reader. All right, so this was, everything right here. This sums it up. First of all, this is the verse from the Bible, and essentially this is quoting some God, right? Quoting some God, and according to her, it's Yahweh. And then she goes on to tell us what an Asherah is. And the Asherah were symbols of the original God, which was a symbol of goddess, right? And so then she sums it up and says that Yahweh's absolute hostility to the Asherah was the political hostility of the nomadic, pastoral Hebrew people, or their priesthood at least, to the settled matriarchal cultures and their goddess beliefs. It became a psychological hostility to everyone on earth because this has become doctrine in biblical texts. And so then this is more quotes from the Bible. So I would like to believe that, I think that I want to insert this here. I think that, like, for example, when we're connecting with God inside, right? I would like to believe that we're connecting with true God, right? The goddess. It's probably more of an it, right? But the important thing that I feel like right now has to do with the fact that if we look at how our society is, and with religion being like a cornerstone of our society, how could these religions leave out the feminine aspect the way that it did? Like what, and this book makes you wonder, like, was there an agenda to that? I also would like to believe that the Hebrews, I'm sure that they were people just doing the best that they could do, right? Doing what they thought was right. And I also will believe that about everyone who, I try to believe that about everybody. Like, we're all doing the best we can with the information and the knowledge that we've been given and how we're being led, right? So I'm sure that, people just want to be worshiping or following what's real, what's right, and what's true, whether they think that's Yahweh or not, right? So I don't think that, for the most part, right, people are innately trying to do bad things. However, there are people there is a specific group that were in that energy. They did know what they were doing, and they did it that way on purpose. And then right now, I think that we're just on a journey of like rediscovering and uncovering, but I feel like we need to do our due diligence. And we don't need to leave important things off the table. We have to bring these things into account. So, this book, I realize that a lot of people may not like it. They may be turned off by the idea of this book. This book gives plenty of references, so go find another book. I can talk about, 5 or 6 other books that have this same topic in it as well. So it's not just this author and it's not just this book. But what we do know, and so I'm going to go back and share the screen that I was sharing. What we do know, right, is for the most part, we all know that, Christianity, the big three, Judaism and Islam, were inspired from the Sumerian texts. I think that we all agree on that much. And we know that there is a Mother Newt. We know that. And just literally by looking at the sky, all you got to do is go out and look at the sky. The sun sits in the sky, right? The sun sits in the sky. The sun sits in the womb. And that's enough proof. Okay. Also, we need to expand, I think, with our viewpoints on the spectrum. Okay. So radio waves are kind of quote unquote, I'm gonna say low vibrational waves. If correct me if I'm wrong, right? This is the slower end of the spectrum. Okay, I'm saying lower vibration, but it is what it is. Correct me if I'm wrong if you end up watching this, but and towards this end, the X-rays and the gamma rays is the opposite end. So I'll have to go and find it'll be in another share that I go into detail about that. But we got to look at it like that. It's like, okay, we're dialing into something. Absolutely. The way that this reality was set up here, what was it set up? Who set it up like this? And if we can dial 26 and be dialed into a radio frequency, right here, my question is, okay, can we dial another number in? Is there another number we can dial in? Also, y'all can laugh at me, but I'm sorry. This is what I'm questioning in my mind. Also, so the sun lines up with this galactic center on December 18th, right? About December 18th. And also, like when I was doing a little bit of research, it's actually closer to 27 degrees and not 26. It's like 26 degrees and 55 something. So it's closer to 27, not 26, which would put a big, question mark into this entire share based on the number 26. But if we're rounding up, but I could be wrong about that, right? But what I was saying was, here, where are we? Let me go back to that still where the sun is at the center. Right there. The other planets at some point during the year line up with the galactic center as well, right? Venus, all the other planets that we have, they may line up with the galactic center. I know the sun is the primary it is the life-giving force in our solar system. Where does the sun get its power from? Where does the sun get its power from? So these were my questions today and the things that came to mind. Thank you. I see some comments. Thank you so much. True, the feminine was there. It was there. They were just removed from all three. Yeah, it was there. Aries should be before Pisces. Thank you. I didn't see that till now. So the signal, yes, there is a signal. coming through. So there are a lot of gems in this broadcast. I would suggest that you watch the entire thing. There's a signal being broadcast constantly. There are signals being broadcast. I think the beauty is we can choose, maybe to some extent, what we tune into and dial into. The other question that I want to pose is, how high do we want to go? I think that we should always be striving for the highest. And I think that this type of work is excellent. And at the same time, I feel like it's important that we base what foundation are we standing on? Are we standing on the false divinity, or are we standing on the true divinity? And then also, does it even really matter too? Like, does it matter? Will it matter? Because maybe it won't. But I just personally, I'm going to be always digging for the truth. And that's what's important to me, is the truth. So I would say God is not a radio. Okay. God is not a radio for sure. I think God's come through radio waves. And then my question would be, do you want to be listening to the God that's coming through on the radio wave? Or do you want to be listening to what's coming through on the higher waves or the other waves? I'm saying higher, but I'm trying to stay not politically correct, but I'm trying to stay outside of duality, which is difficult. I'm still growing as well. But we also know that, our souls inhabit these bodies here on earth, right? But where are the origin of our souls? They come from different systems, different star systems. Okay. So there might be a certain frequency that's being basically projected on and creating this variable of reality. But it may not be the only, and it may keep you in a certain reality. It keeps you in a certain mindset. It keeps you only thinking of God in these ways, right? So should we be thinking outside of that, is my question. Shouldn't we be thinking outside of that? Okay, and so that's pretty much my episode and my thoughts. Let me just double check my notes that I'm not leaving anything out. So last things in my notes, Yahweh is a child of the cosmic mother. Ultimately, that's what I'm saying today. Okay, so Yahweh is a child of, the mother gave birth to Yahweh. So, wonder what can be uncovered with that, if bring that into the conversation. Let's see. Yep. Radio waves is just one particular wavelength on the entire spectrum. And how do these messages look at different wavelengths? Are they the same? Is it different? Let's see. Do women? And, lastly, this also has me questioning, like, what are the differences between men and women? Because women have a womb. Women have wombs. How, in what ways are we different on a soul level? It's just something that I'm questioning. And how significant are those differences? Just, I don't know, but just wondering. All right, and that's it. That is it. So I would invite you to read this book along with me. It's interesting above all else. There's just a lot of interesting things in here that have you thinking. I'm going to be looking into some of the sources that she used in writing this book, because those would be, I think, beneficial to have in the conversation. All right. So thank you for joining in with me live, everyone. Today is Sunday, and on Sunday is fifth iteration podcast day. I hope to see you another day this week, and I'll come through on one of those other channels, but I'll see you then. Until next time.